Hello, uh, this is Pastor Joe, and the lesson today is trust and obey. Trust and obey. Very easy to say, but very difficult to do sometimes. Okay. The objective is to help us to recognize that trust in God involves not only belief but also action. True faith manifests in obedience to God's commands, even when the path forward is unclear or seems difficult. By learning from biblical examples of trust and disobedience, we will be equipped to grow in our relationship with God. The main Bible verse is from Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your understanding. In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your path straight. I just take a moment and just think about a time when you had to trust someone completely. Think about when you had a problem or an issue come up and you asked someone for advice and they gave you some advice and you followed it and things worked out well. Yeah. Now, think about how it relates to God. When you're talking to people, they may or may not give you good advice. But when you are following God's wishes in your life, there's no question about the outcome. Therefore, we should always understand the importance of trusting in God. For me, I would not be here today if it wasn't for someone who I listened to, someone who gave me some advice. I followed the advice, and here I am now. Uh, I can only imagine what would happen if I had not followed that person's advice. I can always say that I don't have to worry about what's going to happen because God's in control. As long as I follow God's commandments, follow God's will in my life. Let's take a minute and let's define trust. Trust at its core, trust is reliance on someone's integrity, strength, or ability. It's letting go of our need to control and allowing God to take the lead. Say that again. It's letting go of our need to control and allowing God to take the lead. Trust is the foundation of our relationship with God. Now, obedience. True trust manifests in obedience. Because you can say you trust, but if you don't obey, then you really don't trust. Obedience means that we act on God, what God said. Even if we don't have all the answers. When we walk into a room, we flip the switch, or you just make the lights come on. Now, how many of us really know how electricity works? Where does it come from? Is it magic? We don't know. But we don't need to know. All we need to know is that by flip the switch, the light will come on. I have to trust. I have to trust. Trust is tested in our obedience, especially when the road is tough or uncertain. We often face situations that stretch our faith, and it's not unusual for that to happen. But understanding that this trust is the building block. It starts here, it goes to here, goes to here, it goes to here, and all of a sudden we are in full obedience to trust in God. That happens, but it doesn't happen overnight. A little bit by little bit by little bit. If something goes wrong, we think about time that God made it right. And then we know that it's going to be okay. And then the next time, we know it's going to be okay. Then we begin to expect it to be okay. Because we know that God's going to do it. That's trust. That's obedience. Let's look at Abraham. Let's look at Abraham. Abraham was called the father of faith. His name was Abram. God called him to leave his home, to go somewhere he'd never been before. And and he went. He went. He followed God. And that's what we're supposed to do. In Genesis 22, we find that his faith has grown so that when God uh, commands him to kill his son as a sacrifice, he doesn't hesitate. He does not have, even though it's a very difficult decision, I'm sure, on his part, but he didn't hesitate. The Bible didn't say that. It's because he had been building that faith, building that trust along the way. Now, we understand is that life is going to be full of unknown, but the more that we trust God, the easier it becomes the next. The more that we trust God, the easier it becomes the next. That as it was Abraham, it would be with us. Now, understanding is that trust is not passive. Trust is a verb. It involves action. Now, we think of trust as a noun, but, and it is a noun, but it's also an action verb. And when we obey the visible truth about God, Abraham was willing to trust God, even though God gave him a very difficult situation. But Abraham will do that. But didn't know what God had in plan. Didn't have to know. Same thing with us today. We don't have to know. If we talked about the electricity, we flip the switch, we expect the light to come on. We don't need to know why and how. We just need to trust and believe that it's going to come on. That's what trust and obey is. Okay, going forward here. Let's look at an opposite of Abraham, Saul. We read about Saul in 1 Samuel 13, 8 through 14. Uh, Saul was preparing for battle, and was instructed by Samuel to wait for Samuel to come so that Samuel could offer a sacrifice before the battle. But Saul couldn't wait. He was afraid. He just couldn't wait. So he went ahead and offered the sacrifice himself. When Samuel came and says, no, no, I told you to wait. And because you did not wait, God is taking your kingdom away from you and giving it to someone else. How often do we miss out on blessings because we're unwilling to wait? Or we act out of fear. What Saul did. And because of that, he lost his kingdom. Now, looking at us today, God has many blessings for us, but the blessings come in his time, not in our time. And it may not come our way. It comes in God's way. What we've got to do is stop, listen, wait on the Lord, and be of good courage, and he will strengthen our soul. So we cannot be like Saul. Saul lost his kingship, okay? Trusting in God's timing is crucial. Again, Saul's impatience cost him his kingdom. If we fail to trust God, we may forfeit the very blessings he has prepared for us. No question about that. Because God has blessings for us in his time and in his way. As you said earlier, we don't have to understand. We don't have to understand. Then we have Peter. Peter had trust, but Peter also had doubt. Look at Matthew 14, 22 through 33. When Jesus walks on the water, Peter sees him, and Peter says, I'm going to walk on the water too. And Peter steps out on the boat. Now, there's a book that I read once that says that if you want to walk on water, you got to get out of the boat. And that's what Peter did. Peter got out of the boat and he started walking toward Christ. No problem. But then Peter felt the waves. He felt the wind. He took his eyes off of Christ and began to look at the wind, look at the waves, and he began to doubt and wonder, what am I doing out here? And he began to sink. When he took his eyes off of Christ, he began to falter. But we need to understand is that Christ was still there. Christ didn't leave him. Christ reached out his hand and says, "Come, ye of little faith, believe in me." That's what we got to do. When we leave our focus from Christ and put our focus on the problem, it begins to be a problem because we begin to doubt the God that we love. And we can't do that. We need not do that. We have to understand the importance of being focused and keeping our eyes on the main thing. And the main thing is Christ. Then we have the Israelites. They were on the brink of entering the promised land. Moses sent out 12 of the best men and said, "Good luck. Come back and report." Now what happened? 10 of them came back and said they looked like giants. And Caleb, Joshua said, "So what? We got God on our side." And then, but the 10 won out with the people. The people were so afraid that they lost out on the blessing and they ended up wandering in the wilderness 40 years. And all of the adults died because they chose not to have faith, not to trust, and not to obey. Trust and obey. But there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. Sometimes we are frightened, we are paralyzed, we don't do what we're supposed to do. And when we do, what happens is that we lose out on blessings because we don't trust, we don't obey. Now, we've looked at some examples. There are plenty others in the Bible, but we have Abraham who trusted God most of the time. Now, we do notice Abraham faltered a little bit when it came to when he was entering the new country, and he thought they were going to kill him, so he told his wife to lie. He faltered, but he still had a heart like David to believe in God. Okay, and he weathered the storm. You have Saul, on the other hand, who did something wrong, should have, could have repented, but instead he blamed the people. He blamed them for his actions. And we have Peter. Peter trusted God, trusted Christ, as long as he could see him, as long as he would focus on him. But when his focus came off of Christ and went toward the problems, the water, the wind, the waves, he doubted and he began to sink. We can't do that. We start this journey, we got to continue the journey. We start this journey by reaching out to Christ and having Christ to be our leader. We have to continue that. We have to continue that. And then we have the Israelites who are afraid, so much so to say that they look like giants. And I don't know whether they were giants or not. It really doesn't matter. Because even if they were, God's in control. And Caleb and Joshua said it don't matter. We're not looking at them, we're looking at God. We don't care about them, we care about God. We're not talking about our supposedly inabilities. We're thinking about what God can do, what he has done, and what he's still doing in Caleb and Joshua's life. That's how they looked at it. As college students, you are called to trust and obey God. Okay? Always. If you're unsure of your future, trust in God. When you're tempted to take shortcuts, and act out of fear. Choose obedience. When the storms of life hit, keep your eyes on Jesus. Keep your eyes on the prize. Now, we always say, well, trust. Okay. But the question, how? How do you build that trust? One is understand you got to know God's character. You got to know who God is. Because once you know who God is, then you can trust him. If you have any question about who God is, then maybe you don't have the trust you're supposed to have. So think about who God is. Think about where he's brought you from. And think about the fact that he's never going to leave you nor forsake you. Pray and surrender your life to God. You know, understand is that you don't have to worry. You choose to worry. But the Bible says to give your words to God and he will hear you. Then obey everything. Make it a habit. No matter how small it is, make it a habit to trust God. So that the next time it becomes easier. And the next time it becomes easier. And the next time it becomes easier. Okay? Because that's what it's about. It's about growing in God. Growing in God. Surround yourself with your faith community. People who you attend church with, people who you attend Bible study with. You know, surround yourself with that support group. You weren't made to be in this battle by yourself. When Moses needed someone, God told him to find Aaron. When Elijah thought he was alone, God said, no, he got 7,000 of us, not two, not three, but 7,000. Paul had Barnabas, okay? Paul had Silas. Everyone has someone. No woman's by themselves. You may choose to be by yourself, but that's your choice. But you don't need to be. And never, ever forget where God has brought you from. God has brought me from a mighty long way. I still got more to go, further to go. But when times get tough, times is rough, I need to think about where I was and where I am. And think about that the reason why I am where I am now is because God brought me this far. He brought me this far, and he would never leave me nor forsake me. And just like he would never leave me nor forsake me, he will never leave you nor forsake you. During this coming week, I ask you just to look in your life and look and see if there's a little bit of hesitancy in your life, something that you're really not trusting God for. You know, just think about it, pray about it, and then do something about it. Trusting God. Make it an action word. Make it an action word. And I will pray with you and for you this week that you will overcome any doubt that you may have. Because there's no reason to doubt. Because God is in control. And I'm not telling you what I think. I'm telling you what I know. And I'm telling you what I know because I have experienced it. I have experienced God's love, God's grace, and God's mercy. Thank you very much. Take care and have a great week.